Welcome back, Stas23 here, back again with some knife therapy, and today I'm going to give you my top 5 favorite budget steels, $60 and under, and this is just due to testing a bunch of knives over the 5 years of the channel. These are the steels that I've really grown to like, and for different reasons. The two knives you see right here did not make the list because they're in two different steels that are a little bit more expensive. And the first is the Kizer Towser K in 154 cm steel. One of my favorite steels in a budget range, but these are usually in the 65 and up range. So they just barely didn't make this list. And I chose the 60 and under because I figured, you know, even though everybody's definition of a budget knife is going to be different depending on your income, I figured $60, pretty much anybody can save up $60 and buy themselves a good quality knife. And the other one is this Cold Steel Recon 1 Mini in AUS 10, another excellent steel, but once again, at least the ones that I have are all 65 and up. So that's the only reason these two aren't on this list. We're going to start out at the number 5 spot, work our way down to my favorite in the number 1 spot. And I'm going to have examples of knives that I recommend in those steels while we go through it. So let's get started. Number 5, we have Bowler N690. It's a good stainless budget steel that is highly corrosion resistant. I used to use it a lot when I would go fishing, especially in the saltwater areas when I didn't have, like, say, an LC200N knife on me or something. It does a really good job. It can withstand the elements pretty well, especially if you take care of it. And it holds an edge pretty similar to D2, at least if the heat treat is good enough. It's not always the case. If it's ran a little softer, then that may not be the case. However, the only reason that it made it so far on my list is because the prices that they're charging for N690, in my opinion, are a little steep, because most of them fall in the same prices as 154 cm, and I much prefer 154 cm. That's one of my all-time favorite budget steels, under $100 at least. And that, you know, just kind of puts me off. We have right here the Kizer Mini Beg Letter. Really cool knife. Very smooth action on bearings in some beautiful American micarta. We have the Best Tech Bandit. I haven't reviewed this one yet, but I'm working on the review right now. Very interesting little knife, also in micarta. Now, the Kizer Horn is technically $62, right above our price range, but figured I would at least toss it in there. We have the Kizer Swayback. Kizer does probably the most in this price range in N690. They also have a lot above this price range as well. Another cool one. I'm not sure why they discontinued the ones with the thumb studs here. And probably one of the best budget little flippers right here, the Kizer Lieb. It has such a snappy, fun action to it. Nothing I can really say terrible about N690, but it's just not going to beat out 154 cm for me. Number 4, we have D2 Tool Steel. This steel has absolutely exploded in the knife industry over the last several years. Every company out there has got D2 knives, and I think they choose D2 because they can get it very cheap, and it is such a widely available steel that pretty much every steel manufacturer has their formulation of D2. And you see it in all kinds of budget knives, from super cheap to a little bit higher end. And it's a very fluctuated steel. Its chromium content is just under what we classify as a stainless, so It's definitely something that you would want to take care of. And I found that with D2, the blade finish really dictates how stain resistant it's going to be. A fine satin finish, or like a fine satin finish like this, or a nice like polished style stone wash with like a nice finish underneath, I found that those resist staining a lot better than, say, a blasted finish like this. I am testing this knife right now, and you can see right here with this blasted rougher finish, it already has some corrosion right there. I live in the South. We have very, very high humidity. So that is one of the main reasons why D2 did not make it higher on my list. Even though it can hold an edge longer than the first 3 on my list, that is with a proper heat treat, it is not always the case. You know, that's what you're gonna find when you buy a $10 knife in D2. I can promise you that heat treat is not gonna be that great. Now, I have had some in that $30 price range that were outstanding. Some in the $20 price range that were pretty darn good. But they're definitely not going to be able to compete with, say, like Benchmade's D2. They do a very good job with their heat treat, and it holds a much, much better edge than every single one of these out here. The only problems I've ever had with D2 besides corrosion is sometimes I get a little bit of chipping. I'm guessing, you know, when they ran a little bit harder, but it hasn't been a case that I see very often. So let's go through some of these knives. Like I said, this one I'm testing right now, getting ready for the review. Definitely want to check this one out. This is one of the Two Sons cheaper knives, the 6-leaf. This is a model SL11, and yeah, this one kind of surprised me. Then we have the oh-so-famous, popular, I should say, QSP Penguin in brass in D2 with coated blade. I don't mind it so much when it has a coated blade. One of my favorite Bestech budget knives, the Bestech Texel. I did this acid stone wash to it, and I did a video on how to do this. If you haven't checked that out and you want to know how, then go check that video out. The Artisan Cutlery large feldspar, excellent value. For like 54 bucks, you get contoured micarta scale, super comfortable, great action, just an awesome knife. Another one that did excellent in my review and testing, Petrified Fish large beluga. This is actually in K1 Bowler K110, but it's pretty darn similar to D2 in composition and in my testing. And then next up we have the Kubi knives, Nova. Absolutely love the Nova. Nice 4-inch blade, excellent action, super comfortable flipper, comfortable ergos. And then I don't need to talk about this one much, of course, the Ontario Rat Model 1 and D2. There's so many videos about that. D2, really good steel, but lacks corrosion resistance in the you know, stainless classification, I guess you could say, and holds a good edge. Can be a little chippy depending on how it's heat treated. Number 3, we have AR RPM 9 stainless steel. This is basically a powdered metallurgy version of a 9CR18 MOV. This is a proprietary steel made by Artisan Cutlery, as you can see here. It's really cool when you see a company actually putting effort into improving on a budget steel. You don't see that often, and I like seeing that type of thing in the community. I found that I can get an extremely high level of sharpness with the ARPM 9 steel, pretty much like I can with 2 other steels that we'll be talking about here soon. It has decent toughness. I've done some impact testing with these knives, and they didn't have any severe chipping or anything, just some minor rolling. and good corrosion resistant. And I haven't had any experience with, like I said, any major chipping. Sharpening does take me a tad bit longer than the next two steels I will be talking about. That said, it's not bad at all, especially if you're using diamonds to sharpen. It'll be a breeze for you. You could definitely use one of the little field sharpeners or something like that and get a quick rudimentary edge on it, and you'll be just fine. I've reviewed and tested every single one of these knives thoroughly, and they did pretty darn well. This is the CJRB Rhea with the micarta scales. I think this is for like 54 bucks. Excellent knife. I just tested this one, and this one blew me away with its cutting geometry and how comfortable it was. This is the Moore Malia, designed by Swags. Then you have the very stunning artisan branded Arroyo. This is a Dirk Pinkerton design. Definitely has those Dirk Pinkerton lines. Very, very attractive looking knife. Very smooth, refined. I think it's a good looking knife if you like that style. And last but certainly not least, the CJRB Krog. If you're looking for a heavy duty user, and you want a stainless, I think this is the best way to go. I've beat the snot out of this one, as you can see. I tested this up against their D2 in the Krog as well, and they performed pretty similarly. I did find that the their D2 held up, that edge held a little bit longer than the RPM 9 steel. However, the toughness was pretty similar, at least in my testing. I did get some very minor rolling, but I did chop through some copper wire with that. If you hadn't seen that review, definitely go check it out where I compare those two knives. Definitely a good steel. I just haven't had enough experience with it to make it higher on the list like I have with the last two. And the price points tend to go up after, say, these four. There aren't a lot of them in their line that are under the $60 price point. They do have the large feldspar and a few others that are in that price point. So hopefully we see more of these in the 60 and under. That would be very nice, and maybe next time they'll make it higher on the list. The number 1 and number 2 spot were very close, neck and neck for me, but in the number 2 spot we have 9CR 18 MOV stainless steel. Now, whenever I talk about this steel, I'm going to be talking about it strictly from Civivi and Sencut, their even more budget brand, coming from We Knives, because I've tested other ones from Real Steel and a few other companies, and they just weren't on par with the heat treatment that Civivi is doing. They do a really, really good job. And I must say, when I first tested one of their knives, I think it was the Naja, it absolutely blew me away on how well it performed at the $42 price point that I paid for it. It was mind-boggling, to say the least. I find that it's a super easy knife to sharpen. Deburrs very quickly. It strops up very nicely. It takes a very, very wicked edge. I mean, you can get such a fine edge on this knife that, you know, you do the little 3-finger test and it's going to bite into your skin immediately if you do a good job with your sharpening. Another thing that makes their knives so good is that they put really good edge geometry on their knives. That means they ground them nice and thin, so they're going to perform that much better because they're not going to have as much resistance as, say, a thicker bevel. These are just some of the knives that I have in this steel. I've noticed here lately that even though it started out as a civivi steel, whenever they brought the Cut line, the more budget-friendly line, more budget than civivi, that they pushed the 9CR over to the Cut line, and I think we'll completely see it diminish on the civivi side eventually. But I'm okay with that. The Cut knives have gotten a lot better. This is the Cut Scepter. I've reviewed this one. It did really well for me in my testing. I will say that the factory edge on this scepter did have some chipping issues, but after the first sharpening, I got rid of, I'm sure, some fatigue steel on that edge, and it held a much better edge after that. Next up, one of my favorite Cuts to date is the Cut Honoris. Absolutely love this knife. I use it all the time, even after the testing and review. Super fidgety knife, lightweight. You got multiple deployment methods. You can carry it left or right-handed, and it's easy to open and close left-handed as well. So, you know, good one for lefties also. And it just has that awesome slicing geometry, even better than the Scepter there. Then we have the Cut Snap, another one that I've tested and reviewed. Now, one thing that I will say, it is a stainless steel, and it is, you know, a pretty good stainless steel. But once again, edge finish matters, especially here in the South. This one has a blasted finish on it, a blasted stonewash finish. And, you know, they do that to cut cost, so they can leave it a little rougher underneath there and just hit it with a nice blast. And you can see, I don't know, well, hopefully you can see right down here, I got some rust forming. Now, I didn't do a lot to take care of this. I probably spray it with EDCI once a month or so, and I might have left something on it, but it just shows you that, you know, whenever they're blasting this with this rougher media, is putting small craters in there, allowing water droplets to sit on the surface, and that will eventually corrode the steel. Also, it doesn't handle wear too well. It starts to smudge, which is not really something I'm worried about, especially in a budget knife. The Snap is a nice little folder if you want a full-size clip point. Then another one that I just reviewed recently, this is the Cut Bronte. A very interesting knife, very, very slicey edge geometry. You can see going down there to that tip. If you're looking for a nice budget front flipper, this one is nice. I love those rounded ones if I have to have a front flipper, and it works very well. Also, you have a second deployment with the fuller, which I enjoy more than the front flipper. Just a very interesting, like CX style blade shape. Very nice and thinly ground. Just a cool overall design. And then one that probably doesn't need any introduction. Probably one of civivi's best for the money knives and 9CR, and this is the civivi Praxis. This is one of the newer ones with the black micarta. It's like a black burlap, it looks like. Very, very nice edge geometry on this, and you got that tall grind on there, and comes down to a thin edge. Just love the Praxis, and I'm glad to have one back in the collection. Number one was probably no surprise if you've been around the channel long enough, and that is 14C28 in Sandvik steel. This is another stainless steel, and this was actually designed for cutlery, which is not too common. Usually we find a steel and adopt it into the knife world. It's not too often where the steel is made for the cutlery industry. It's starting to happen a little bit more nowadays with, you know, like Chris Reed bringing in the, what is it, S30V, S35, I mean S35VN and S30V, S45VN. So hopefully that continues to happen and continues to improve. But this one is a very simple steel. Kershaw was the one that exclusively used it for the longest time, and then others started to notice how well it performed in a budget format. So more and more companies have started to adopt it, and I really hope that we see a lot of the D2 be interchanged with 14C28N. steel. One of the things I like most about 14C is that some of the sharpest edges I've ever gotten have been with 14C 28N steel. I sharpened this one up about a month ago, and I mean, I usually do the 3-finger test, but literally it bites as soon as I touch that steel. It deburrs very cleanly. Once you use it, just pass it on a strop a few times and you'll be just fine. You can use green compound if you'd like. You don't have to use diamond paste or anything to get this back to hair shaving sharp. Takes a very, very nice polish. I didn't even try on this one. I think I brought it to like 3,000 grit and stropped it up a little bit by hand, and it just takes a wicked polish. And with 14C, that polish doesn't lose its bite. I don't find it really loses bite like some steels with, you know, high vanadium content or high carbide content. So the knife I was just playing with is the civivi riffle. We have right here the mini beluga by Petrified Fish, another really cool one that I just picked this one up recently, but I had the black with the blasted stonewash blade before this one. Really cool knife. Another awesome little knife. Probably the best value small knife in 14C that I found, and this is the Reich P662B. You can also get this one in a drop point if you don't like Wharncliffe's. I just think that Wharncliffe blade's sexy. Nice smooth action on washers. And then we have the civivi brazen drop point. The Tanto one is in D2. This one's in 14C. Very comfortable. I tested this one pretty hard, and when I reviewed it, I gave this a glaring review. Definitely knives that I recommend here. Civivi riffle and a pretty long-range popular knife, the Reich P801, for good reason. It's like 30 bucks, and they all have excellent action. I think it looks attractive, comfortable in hand. It is a little thin in hand, so you know you might get fatigued using it for a while, but nice blade geometry here with that full flat ground blade, riding on bearings, nice snappy action. Just a really cool knife. It is a little heavy because it is stainless steel, but not overly bearing there. So definitely one of my favorite, definitely my favorite budget steel, 60 and under. But you know, it's one of my favorite steels, you know, throughout, just because it's so easy to sharpen, so easy to touch back up, and it's just one that it has been a favorite of mine for a long time. It makes an excellent steel for day-to-day EDC tasks, especially on a budget. You know, if you're not going to be beaten on this knife, it's going to be good. It can take some impact, but it's not the most impact-resistant steel. They make, you know, tool steels like 3V that are perfect for that kind of application, or, you know, high carbon 1095 or something like that if you want to beat on it. As an everyday EDC knife, you know, 14C is excellent. So if you have any questions or about any of the steels or any of the knives I showed today, please let me know down below, because there's way too many for me to link down in the description. I will do my best to answer as many of y'all questions as possible. And I hope everybody's having an absolute amazing day. I will see y'all on the next one. Peace.